This is the Phantom. From the World Wide Web, welcome to Phantom Radio. Presented by the Kegel Company, the #1 lane maintenance company in the world. Please check out their website that is on the screen right now. Well, Phantom fans, this week's special guest, one of the most interesting people in all of bowling. He's been involved for years in many ways in our great sport. And his website is one of the fascinating sites that you'll ever come across. He personally knows and has rubbed shoulders with some of the greatest bowlers of all time. And there have been some serious rumors that a movie could be produced about his life story. He was recently featured in a Bowler's Journal article, and it created a lot of excitement in the bowling world. Hello, Cliff. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Phantom. It's really great to be here.
As you know, I haven't seen you for a while. I got a lot to talk about with you this week. So, first of all, where are you located and how are you doing and are you healthy?
Okay, well, AC, I mean, come on. Where else would a real gambler that lives on the East Coast be from? As a matter of fact, on my websites, I'm actually known as AC Butch. As far as the way I'm doing great.
All right. Well, in the opening, I mentioned your website, which really, in my opinion, it's a fabulous site. And if you would, let our listeners know what that website address is, okay?
www.actionbowlers.com, and I'm proud to say, Phantom, it's the only website of its kind in the whole world featuring the great past and present action
it's
bowlers.
awesome, you know, and I can't wait for the feedback I get from all our listeners that are going to contact that website, because they do get back with me, and I don't know about my opinion is very important, but I do hear a lot of things about these kind of comments that I make. And all right, Cliff, so you also go by the name of Butch, so how the heck did that nickname come about?
Well, actually, there is no great story. I didn't even know my real name until I went to school. And even then, I didn't answer to this new strange thing, Cliff. What is a Cliff? I didn't even know what it was.
Well, Butch, obviously you have a nickname, and so do I. And you have known many, many characters over the years that have also had some great nicknames. So how about sharing a couple of your favorites with us? Could you do that?
Let's go with some of the really well-known ones, like the Horn, Lemon, the Whale, the Ox, Stoop, who was Marty Green. Stoop is the guy I was the closest to because he was the top big gun out of Avenue M, which was my home lanes, and he's the one who, him and Mac brought all the action there. Then, of course, there's Faxon Deacon, Leonard the Cane and his brother Buffalo, and, of course, the classic, the Beeper. The Beeper is my own personal favorite. As a matter of fact, I had the pleasure of bowling him in 1976 at Raceway Lanes. What a trip that was. Never, and Phantom, I mean never, did I ever bowl against someone like this. Number one, the foul lights had to be off, otherwise he wouldn't bowl you at all. He went at least 5 feet over, constantly beeping all the way. But to top it all up, this guy was a top-notch, very good, tough action bowler who drove everybody nuts that he bowled.
You know, you mentioned a name in there that, in fact, it was the fellow that you were with the last time I saw you, Lenny the Cane. You know, I get a lot of people mix me up with him because we both got the name Lenny, and I've been on your side a couple times. But how's Lenny the Cane doing?
Well, he's in Florida, and he was a tremendous help to me when I was first starting action bowlers. He was actually almost a partner back then. I mean, he just contributed so much to his stories and everything. And, of course, he came in from Florida, and we had that big night of action at Deer Park in the late 90s where we tried to get the action scene going again. And it was pretty good that day. It was a little bit of a disappointment, but we still had a lot of top-notch action bowlers, and it didn't bring back. When I say it wasn't what it should have been, I'm thinking of the 60s. Nothing is ever going to be like the 60s. I mean, those were the days that you could walk in on a Wednesday night, 3 a.m. in the morning, let's say at Avenue M, which had the biggest action for 3 years. I mean, it ran for 3 years straight. And you could see 28 planes going with the best action bowlers on the East Coast, with the Shylocks and the lawyers and the accountants, the gangsters, the regular people. You would swear it was Sunday afternoon, the way the bowling alley was packed. Money going like crazy. People that think they know what action is these days, if they ever walked into that scene, they would swear they died and went to action heaven, because there is nothing like that.
Yeah, I know. You know, I started working on the tour in the early 70s, and that's all I heard about was the action that used to be on, on the East Coast a few years back. And it's a shame that that's pretty much all gone now, because that was a big part of bowling back then. And the proprietors and bowlers really do miss them days.
Well, Phantom, I'll tell you, I miss them because I've done a lot in my life. I'm a professional gambler. I've been involved in show business to some degree with my own TV shows. I had an entertainment business in Atlantic City where I booked the yachts back in the 80s before they turned most of the lounges into slot parlors. What a joke that is. And but nothing compares to my early years when I was a teenager bowling. I'll tell you, this was something that, looking back, I spent 80% of my time in the bowling alleys. It should have been 90% because...
Butch, these shows that I have every week, they're about 25 minutes in duration, and I want to talk to you again sometime about a lot of them stories from the past. If you didn't mind coming back sometime in the future, I'm sure we could have several shows with just some of the stories that you have. But would you be willing to do that in the future?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, like I said, sometimes I forget where I am. My tongue gets tied up, my mouth gets all distorted. So if you can put up with that,
that'd be awesome. But, on this show, I want to get the people to get to know you a little bit better. And, I mentioned in the opening that a proposed life story movie about you has been talked about with some seriousness, and I think that would be awesome. So if that happened, who would you want to play your part and why?
Okay, well, we have really two parts. Well, there's many more than two parts, but as far as bowling goes, we have two parts. The early years, I would want it really to be a complete unknown, and someone that was a real action guy at heart and understood the world of the hustler. 1976, my comeback, Ed Norton. It's got to be Ed Norton. I mean, I wouldn't say we look alike, but Ed Norton is me. Let's just put it that way. Nobody but him.
He was in the Rounders, and I thought I was in the card games with him, the way he acted that part out.
I loved him in the Rounders. The Rounders is one of my favorite pictures of all time. I mean, of course, me being a professional poker player helps, and I just love his background in that. And that was a phenomenal picture that didn't do that well, unfortunately. I mean, it's a classic, but at the box office, for some reason, it just didn't do what it should have done.
Well, Butch, as I've mentioned numerous times on this show, our listeners love bowling stories, and I know that there'd be many stories in that movie, and you probably have thousands to tell, but what one story would you want to make sure was told?
Okay, I guess in a way the most powerful would be my 1976 comeback after being away from the lanes for 10 years. And the reason why I was away for 10 years was I did a stupid thing. I got married at a young age, and I was smart enough to give up gambling because I wanted to give the marriage a shot, but I should have never given up. Yeah, definitely should never have given up bowling. But when I did come back in 76, I decided to go after not the action bowlers. I wanted to go after the two biggest backers that were in the scene at the time. And that was Barry Bernstein and the biggest one of all time, Bill Daly. Now, Barry was at best a 180 bowler, so this was a real hustle. I mean, even me coming back then, bowling a 170, 180 bowler, of course I did have to get back into shape after being away for 10 years, but that was a hustle. Now, Bill Daly, on the other side of the coin, was a legit 200 plus, so this wasn't so much of a hustle, but I took Barry at Times Square Lanes for about $6,000. This was after it took me about 3-4 months to set it up. And then a month or so after that, I took Bill Daly down to Cuskey's in Long Island for about $8,000. And in 1976, that was a good hit. I mean, that really was a good hit. I mean, we really don't have time to get into it, but believe me, what went on that 1 year of my comeback with the whole thing to take these two guys down, it's a whole book.
Everything those are the kind of stories that I was talking about. I know you got thousands of them, and when we have you out again, we're going to get into some of these, if you don't mind. All right, I want to talk about your site again, and on there are several players that you have featured with their pictures, and there's some stories about them, and some other guys too, but we used to have a segment on this show called the Phantom Fast Quiz. And I used to ask people all kind of questions. They have to give me a one-word answer, but in this case, I'm going to name several of those star players that you have on your site. And if you would, can you give me a sentence or two scouting report on them? All right, here we go. Mike Limongello.
For the women. The first time I saw him, I was about, I don't know, maybe 16. I walked into Avenue again in the middle of the night. I snuck out of the house. My father didn't allow me to be out at that time. And in walks, I think about 2 a.m., this skinny kid, short, looked like he couldn't bowl with more than a 14-pound bowling ball. And he had these backers that looked like heavyweights. Meanwhile, he calls out the house. Now, you got to remember, at Avenue, this is when we had the biggest action shooters around at Avenue. P.S. to make a long story short, which we don't have now, he ends up bowling first with either Mac or Stoop. He takes them down, takes the other one down. Over the next 4 weeks, takes every big shooter that you can think of down. He didn't lose a match. This kid was
Yes, he was.
as you know.
I always say about him, he had ice water in his veins. All right, here's another name. Ralph Engen.
Okay, well, Butch has to be honest. I don't have any real experiences with Ralph except by reputation. I only saw him bowl once and was totally impressed. This was one of the best and most
that one word, I was wondering if you'd use that word, and I'm not surprised that you did. Feared. Everybody that I know that was coming up back there that would face Ralph, he had the fear of God in him.
That's right, you know it. And what a ball he threw. And he threw that big ball before anybody threw a big ball.
All right, here's another name from the past. Joey Berardi.
Joey Berardi. What can be said about Joey? Joey, I had the pleasure of seeing as part of my comeback in 1976. I was going to Raceway Lanes one night, not knowing what to expect, and upstairs, because that was an old converted movie theater, which I love those type of houses. I go upstairs, and right in the middle, I see Joey getting ready to bowl, none other than Richie Hornwright. Of course, the Horn's over. He's past his prime. There's no two ways about it. Not that he's old, but he's past his prime. He throws 10 balls in practice, buries them all. I mean, I never saw a ball like this before. As great a ball as I've seen. What I saw him doing, I said, oh my God, and I had no idea who he was. No idea at all. Meanwhile, the Horn, after the 10 balls, did what I didn't think was possible. He puts his ball in the bag, walks off the lanes and goes, match over. It didn't even start. This is the Horn backing off to me it was an unknown, but how could Joey go?
Wow, I never heard that story. You know, I roomed with Joey for a few years, and boy, he was something else.
Oh, something else. I mean, many people just are in awe of his ball.
All right, here's another one with a fascinating nickname, Iggy LaRusso.
Iggy Russo, oh my God. Iggy used to bowl a lot at Avenue also, back in the heyday. And the first time I saw him, he walked in with 4 bowling balls in one of these big bags. Now you got to remember, this is a time that everybody used 1 ball, not even 2. 1 ball, and that was it. He had these knickers on or something like that with clips around the ankles. He looked like a clown. He talked like a clown. And, of course, I found out later on that he's one of the greatest bowlers in the world when he really wants to be serious. Also one of the biggest hustlers and one of the biggest thumpers in the world, like the time that him and Stoop were bowling each other, not knowing that both of them were dumping and they didn't know this. So you can imagine how low the scores would go. P.S. To get out of this, because one guy put a gun to his head that was betting on him or against him or whatever the heck it was, he had to pull a phony heart attack, which is which is famous in the world of bowling, the Iggy Russo heart attack, but I was there for that. What a phenomenal thing. And after that, they burnt his car down outside. His brand new car that was parked outside. Iggy Russo, wow.
All right, here's another name from the past, but ironically, the guy's still around and he's still bowling well. Ernie Schlegel.
Okay. Ernie also did a lot of bowling there when they all did. Ernie is probably the purest action bowler of them all. And I'm not saying that he was the best. He wasn't. He was great. Don't get me wrong. But Ernie was a true action bowler. He was a smart action bowler. Unlike the rest of them or a lot of the other guys, he knew that this was about money. It wasn't about ego. And what made it easy for him at one point at the beginning to get good matches was he didn't look like a good bowler. He didn't throw a big ball. Meanwhile, if you watch him time after time with the scores, in the pocket, knocking him down a ball that don't carry for crap, the man went on all of these years and everything else that he did. He is the epitome of
He was a hell of a gambler. You know, we played a lot of cards on tour, and he's always looking for the edge. All right, here's another guy with a nickname, Rudy Revs.
Oh, Revs, I didn't even count him in my nicknames. How could I forget the Rudy? Rudy is a throwback to the old-time action bowlers as far as I'm concerned. He's the only modern-day action bowler that's a throwback. As far as in-your-face goes, I've never seen a bowler that's more in-your-face than Rudy. And now here's a guy that's short, but he's built like a tank. I mean, big arms, big neck, big shoulders, throws one of the biggest balls, and he just looks at you, he screams at you in the face. He's a total show, and he was, in the 90s at least, probably without a doubt, the best action bowler in the country.
Well, you know something, Butch, I got a list of about 20 more names here, and we're going to get them next time, but there's one guy that I know you probably did know, I got to know a little bit about, so his name is Kenny Barber.
Kenny Barber, the first time I saw him was at King's Lanes in Brooklyn. I was very young at the time, again about 16. I walked in there, and this was in the afternoon. I don't believe it was even at night. And if I remember correctly, he was bowling Bobby Smith, who was another great action bowler. And this was the guy, the first one that ever just totally blew me away. I saw this skinny kid bowling that threw a ball, and also he's kind of an in-your-face type guy, and for whatever reason, he's the one person that stood out most all these years. He stood out as a phenomenal action bowler, which he was. I mean, he could go up against anybody. And this is somebody you should have on your show. But anyway, he gives me a call, and he's complaining that I didn't have him mentioned enough on action bowlers. He goes, "Do you realize who I am?" And but he got the action bowlers thing from the article they did on me. And I said, absolutely, do I know you? I can talk, he can write, he can do everything, and he's going to be a big contributor to my website. As a matter of fact, he's coming down to AC to meet with me.
Cool. Well, maybe I'll get you that number from you later, and I'll contact him, see if he wants to come on here.
Oh, he's got loads of stories. He was in with all of the big action bowlers, bowling with them, against them, and as he says, the lemon looked up to him, that he was the lemon zero, so who knows?
Well, Butch, the old clock on the wall tells me we're just about out of time, and I can't believe how quickly the time flies in this show. And it's probably why they say it's the fastest show in all of sports, but I could talk to you for hours and hours. But once again, I want you to know I appreciate you being on with us and giving our listeners all the information that you gave us, your opinions, your stories. I enjoyed talking with you. And thanks again for taking the time to be here with us. And you keep in touch, because I want to have you back on again in the real near future, old buddy.
Well, all I can say is, Phantom, the time really did fly, and thanks for having me on. And all the people out there, don't forget to check out actionbowlers.com. And I can only say I hope my tongue didn't get tied too many times. I hope I didn't.
You did a fantastic job, Pards, and I appreciate it.
Phantom, you're great. You are great, and and you have been on my website. And I remember the posts you have were priceless. I love everything about you. You've been around a long time. You know everybody, and everybody
Well, I
totally
appreciate
respect you.
that, and I go to your website at least once a day, and I don't want to, overbear it with too many stories, but I do put some things on there from time to time, and I still will in the future, Pards. Well, Phantom fans, that wraps up the show for this week. Hope that you all enjoyed hearing from Cliff, Butch. Please be sure to tell all your friends about our show, and check out Butch's website at actionblowers.com. So, for Phantom Radio, this is the Phantom.